This is Damon Fordham, Adjunct Professor of History at Charleston Southern University, as well as the Citadel, and I'd like to talk to you about a serious issue of our time, which involves the making it illegal to teach history in many of our nation's schools. According to chalkbeat.org, which is a reputable education site, according to their July the 22nd, 2021 edition, 28 of these United States are restricting the teaching of the contributions of specific ethnic and minority groups, as well as issues dealing with aspects of the history. Now, a lot of this is because you have these politicians today who want to scare up votes from their followers by claiming that this critical race theory is being taught on the elementary, middle, and high school level, which is absolutely ridiculous in that critical race theory is largely a concept that's restricted to law schools, and it's far from what many people say it is, but of course that's another subject. However, the fact of the matter is that a lot of people who want to know a more honest history of seldom covered aspects of American history are not being taught that. So that's a pretty dangerous thing. Now, there are ways to deal with this. Of course, people should fight to keep laws like this from happening or being enforced, and voting out the politicians who encourage that sort of thing. But what are the young kids going to do in the meantime when you're trying to right these wrongs? History gives us the answer to that. Back in the early 1900s, you had the great educator Booker T. Washington out of Tuskegee University in Tuskegee, Alabama, an early historically black college and university. There were a lot of spaces in the rural Deep South that had no schools for black children at all. So what did he do? He teamed up with the magnate of Sears and Roebuck Company, Julius Rosenwald, to start the Rosenwald Schools that saw to it that almost every rural area in the South had at least one school for black children. And that was certainly better than none at all. And because of Booker T. Washington's efforts at his own school, Tuskegee, you had people such as William J. Edwards, who started Snow Hill Academy in Alabama. And William J. Edwards, incidentally, is an ancestor of the filmmaker Spike Lee. And another one of his students, Elizabeth Evelyn Wright, came to South Carolina after she graduated from Tuskegee, and she started Voorhees College in Denmark, South Carolina, that is still there to this very day. In Winston-Salem, North Carolina, you had a situation where, like other cities, African Americans were either forced to ride to the back of the bus, or the city didn't provide good bus service for them. So you had this fellow by the name of C.T. Woodland, who started what was known as the Safe Bus Company in 1926, when he organized the African Americans who had their own private car companies together to make the Safe Bus Company that lasted from 1926 to 1972. So the citizens of Winston-Salem who were black did not have to worry about having to sit in the back and be insulted by bus drivers. And here in the Charleston, South Carolina area, when there were no bookstores available for African Americans, you had the Reverend John Dart, who was a great leader in our city, who died in 1915, and he had his reading room. So his daughter, Susan Dart Butler, in 1927, converted her father's reading room into the John Dart Library. And to this day, it serves a largely African American clientele in the Charleston, South Carolina area. So what does all this have to do with the teaching of the history of ethnic groups in schools? Very simple, ladies and gentlemen. These stories and examples show you that where there is a will, there is a way. And if the laws are not in your favor, there are ways to get around them and still accomplish something. Now, they didn't teach African American history when I was in school, or the history of Native Americans, or the history of Mexican Americans, or any of that sort of stuff. So I learned all those things not in the classroom, but I learned them in the library, and I learned them at secondhand bookstores. Now, hold it. I know there's some of you saying, well, yeah, but see, you're a bookworm. Not all of our kids are bookworms. Not all of our kids are inclined to do that. I know that. So here's what should happen. Those of us who are knowledgeable about these things have a responsibility to use all these social media platforms where the people are to put these things out there for the average person who is not inclined to learn these things. And then you have some who say, well, they don't give us the books for these sort of things. Well, here's what you do then. You look up a subject that you're interested in and you want to find books on it. If your local library does not have these books, like for example, somebody earlier today asked me about books by W.E.B. Du Bois. I said, well, if you can't find the libraries have a thing called interlibrary loan, where they can get you any book anywhere and transfer it to your nearby library so you can learn about any subject that you would like. And plus, any book that you want can also be found either on various sites such as Bookfinder or eBay or Amazon and such. So once you get that together, you can form what's called study groups, where you can get together and discuss these ideas from these books. And Martin Luther King made an interesting statement in his last book, Where Do We Go From Here?, where he said that it might be possible to transform every ghetto street corner into a miniature school. So you take this knowledge and you take this information, you go to where the people are and spread it among them, and they could spread it to their children. That's one solution. Now, of course, there's some who's going to say, well, wait a minute now. Nobody's going to listen to me if I put that stuff out there. Here's how that works. In every garden, you have trees and plants. You put that seed in that ground, it doesn't grow up right away. But if you keep going back and cultivating that seed, it grows up into something worthwhile and beautiful. Human beings and children are the same way. So you go out there, put that information out there, plant those seeds, keep at it, stay optimistic, and you don't have to worry about what the schools won't teach. You'll have that information and put it to good use. Why? Because a person who knows what was understands what is and can possibly predict what could be in the future. And that's why history is so important. And with that being said, my name is Damon Fordham, giving you advice on what to do about laws restricting the teaching of history.